Kia ora guys and welcome back to the Black Jersey. My name's Max and I'm the host over here at this channel. Today's video is going to be the second part of my previous analysis video, which is on how the Springboks defeated France in the Rugby World Cup quarter final. Absolutely gutting for France. They applied massive pressure to the Springboks in the set piece, and so through exploiting a couple of French defensive mistakes, South Africa were really just able to avoid a lot of that pressure. For today's video, I also want to say a massive thank you to my patrons before we get into everything, because there is still a lot from this match I have yet to talk about that I didn't get to cover in the previous match. And so to start off the video, I'm going to explain how Cyril Baille got his second try for France before I go over the South Africans' experience in the spine, kind of assisting them towards that halfway point, getting them across the line in that second half before we discuss some halftime stats. Now guys, let's get into this. Defence on the blind side, specifically on the left wing, will absolutely cause the Springboks a lot of problems if they face the All Blacks in the final. After Dupont wrestles the ball off Etzebeth, we can very blatantly see the defensive lines from the Springboks, with the Reinach, Mbanambi and Colby all looking at Gregory Aldred. With a heap of space for Peno on the wing, I think it's safe to say a kick is worth the gamble. Although Colby is quicker than Peno since he's an actual winger and not the world's best player being used as a centre on the wing, he is onto the ball first. Peno's defensive prowess, however, pressures Colby into touch. When France get the line out, Malvaka now runs a beautiful wraparound line from the touch and towards the outside. Because of his momentum shift, he's able to dummy Reinach on 30-27, which now allows him to slot between the shoulders of Reinach and Malherbe 1 second later. Because of them being in a bad position to make the tackle, Sia Khaleesi, who is my best friend, is forced to help out there as well. France are then able to recycle the ball for a few phases before Baille gets his second try off a pick and go. So even though the first part of the video showed you guys a lot of the mistakes France were making on defense when they were transitioning from attack to defense in particular, though the rest of the defense is pretty decent, South Africa were facing a lot of pressure that I really wish I could have discussed if I had access to more footage, but the way South Africa relieved a lot of that pressure in the second half comes down to the experience in the spine. Prior to the World Cup, I released a video about the South African depth chart and showed that in a lot of particular jerseys, South Africa did not have a lot of depth. The depth, however, is in the positions where it really counts when it comes to the Springboks. As we can see, the hooker jersey was a bit of an alarming picture on the 1st of January earlier this year, as Deon Fourie had played all of his minutes for South Africa as a flanker. Malcolm Marx being injured, Joseph Dweba not being at World Cup, put massive pressure on Bongi Mbanambi, but he's really toughed it out despite being an older player, and he was awesome in his man of the match performance, playing 75 minutes. Over at number 8, a lot of players have earned minutes in the Ninabe era as well. Jasper Wiese, despite being the guy who at the start of 2023 had played the most minutes in the jersey, Duane Vermeulen, who had missed out on a few minutes due to injury, is backfiring first on the depth chart today, and the fact that he's so experienced and had a proper replacement in the form of Quagga Smith off the bench really helped out. Quagga Smith having, those extra few minutes as a key decision maker for the team really helped out as he came off the bench and delivered a lot of turnovers in this match. Halfback as well. Look at all these. De Klerk, Hendrickse, who didn't even play, Reinach, Jantjies and Williams, all available, and all of them apart from Jantjies have gone to this World Cup. It was very interesting to see that a lot of these guys were getting substituted at similar times. De Klerk, as we move over to fly half, got brought onto the pitch at the same time as Handré Pollard. Although he missed out on a lot of opportunities to get game time before the World Cup and made his comeback nearly a year after his last test for the Springboks, we can see that, all this shared playing experience with the other members of the team allowed him to really just get that position. So not only are the Springboks experienced players, but they also share a lot of experience together as a unit. Pollard at the 1st of January this year had already played 1,000 minutes in the Ninabe era, for example. Lebok, see how low down he was at the start of this year? Because Lebok has been given a mammoth level of minutes in 2023. The fact that, this jersey looking like such a risk is no longer a thing. That's because they've just handed the minutes galore to Lebok to just trust him with this team, get him past Elton Jantjies, and now with the most experienced player coming off the bench to help out, that's why South Africa were able to make such a huge difference. It's no difference for Villiers Leroux over there either, and if South Africa, they did want to go for a 6-2 split, by all means, they could have shifted Damien Willems from 10 to 15 or vice versa because of his experience as well. So having that second half really just trying to turn the tides in their favour, bringing these three guys off the bench helps them a lot. And as we're about to find out through the halftime stats, South Africa needed a hand over there because they had 59% possession and 73% territory in the favour of the French, and France up by 3 points at halftime, winning 22-19. France, however, weren't running as many meshes as South Africa because a lot of those defensive issues they had once transitioning from attack to defence really just allowed South Africa to go for it. Damien Dialendi, I'm sure, is the tiebreaker over here, considering he would have run 30 metres when he got that that ball that landed on the ground. The bounce didn't quite go well. We can also see France just absolutely dominating all of the other attacking stats, but the big thing we see, South Africa had only won 2 turnovers compared to 1 for the French. South Africa are the best jackling team in the world. They're just obsessed with turning the ball over all the time. They've got a very jackal heavy and a very set piece heavy game. The typical Springbok game is, win a jackal, go for the scrum, reset it as much as we can so we get a penalty, then go for either the shot at goal or the line out. That's the typical South African game plan, under Jacques Nienaber. But the fact that France were able to confine South Africa to just 2 turnovers says a lot. France, as we said before, they had a bit of an issue with moving from, attack to defence. That's why they had a lower tackle percentage. So South Africa having to make all those tackles over and over and over, really, really helping their case. And the ruck success for both teams, brilliant. France had to do a lot of work to keep South Africa from, decreasing their ruck percentage number. The scrum, however, it was a bit of an even playing field. A lot of resets for both teams and really just going at each other. 2 out of 3 for South Africa due to Antonio absolutely destroying them. France, on the other hand, got destroyed back when, the hooker just couldn't quite get his bind properly like that. Also, very interestingly, discipline for South Africa. They'd conceded 4 penalties, including the yellow card to Eben Etzebeth. France had conceded 2. So the fact that they conceded, those penalties inside their own half, that was what was helping France get over the finish line, because frankly, both teams were outstanding in the first half. But how did they do so well in the second half? Let's move over to find out. Now that we are turned to actual analysis of the game, Damien Dialendi finds plenty of space with his kick here, proving that there is far more to playing 12 than busting the line at every phase. I now want to show you guys that Baille's offside is brilliantly spotted by the referee. Baille, whose name I think I can pronounce now, knows that South Africa can probably get a try if Smith wins the turnover here. He gets a little desperate though with his feet in front of the ball. After his hands and knees hit the ground, he continues to try and counter-ruck. France, being a better team than South Africa, do manage to retain possession, but because of the infringement, South Africa can go for the corner. While under advantage, it's a pretty similar exercise for Etzebeth now power between Fiku and Jalabert to get a crucial try for the Boks. French fans have been showing some pretty bad sportsmanship after the game. You can see one of these comments here in part 1, for example, saying the ref was biased, and that's because of this here. The hand on the ground hidden behind Olivon's lower leg is Quagga Smith's. Because of Olivon, however, the TMO cannot see the hand. Now that we've zoomed out, we can also see that the referee simply doesn't have the angle at which to see this either. Long story short, refs are humans, just how like the teams are. It's much more obvious when the close-up shot is shown, but when the ref can't see it, you've just got to suck it up. They don't have 800 eyes. The real reason that France lost, however, was ultimately crumbling under pressure at the end, choking. While Ramos does brilliantly to spot this huge amount of space behind the South African defence line, sending Jalabert through to follow the animation and take the ball, let's just say his second attempts to find the space doesn't go as well. Baille is way out to the left with plenty of room to catch this cross kick and get around the Springboks to score a try. Ramos, however, botches it while under advantage. Antoine Dupont, Cameron Woki, a lot of those players, very, very calm, dealing with the pressure really well, but in particular, Mathieu Jalabert, a key decision maker for the team at 10, wasn't really quite coping while Dorian Aldegheri was getting smashed in the scrum off the bench. Because Dupont didn't quite trust the rest of his team to kind of absorb that pressure, with Ramos now moving into 10, Dupont was basically like, right guys, we're going to take the 3. And choosing to take the 3 was France's undoing, because they did not make it down to South Africa's half until the end of the game. As we can see, Reda Wadi is really trying to gain as many meters as possible, and the final score is 28-29 after Wadi knocks the ball on. And despite all this pressure from France, with 60% possession and 63% territory, being a far better team in the breakdown, really giving it to South Africa, South Africa won. France just simply weren't in it mentally enough at the end. You can clearly see they are dominating it. Meters run, defenders beaten, clean breaks, just showing off their brilliant attack structure to really bust the line several times, to beat a team who's broken the line 13 times by a 1-point margin. Shows real tenacity from South Africa at the end over there, don't you think, guys? The key as well is that South Africa were able to win 6 turnovers in the second half. They were getting far more potency over the ball because France, quite simply, their reserves weren't as good as protecting that ball as their starters. When Weenie Antonio came off, for example, I saw a noticeable decline in France's physicality. Romain's half of Vanilla probably made the right call choosing to retire right now because he wasn't quite the best performer there off the bench, rather. France did manage to get 5 turnovers of their own, but really just couldn't quite contain South Africa for the last few minutes or so. And as we can see, well, South Africa's defense, it did go down a little bit, but they were able to recover because they stayed calm under pressure. France at the end, however, they just choked. They were in control. They looked like they were going to get a final few points to seal the deal, but they just couldn't quite get there. Goal kicking success as well. Very uncharacteristic for Thomas Ramos missing one, while Cheslin Colby also did really well to charge one of his kicks down. The key over here, though, the scrum. You just cannot allow South Africa to dominate you in the scrum. Dorian Aldegheri, I don't think we're going to be seeing him in a blue jersey over here, because while he will play for this Rooster as much as he can, he just simply wasn't the best choice for the job. And with the penalties really just starting to move into France's direction this time as well, this is another key. We can see France on 6 penalties, South Africa on 6 if we exclude the yellow card Etzebeth from the first half. So South Africa, using that scrum, were able to draw more penalties out of France, and that contributed to the reason why France couldn't get back into South Africa's half up until Pinot, the best player in the world, broke the line to really give France one more final chance at the end of this match. South Africa are still alive in this World Cup, which is absolutely unbelievable. The best team does not always win matches. You can have all the talent you want. You can have, all the skill, all the tactical analysis you want. But ultimately, when games are this close, it's going to come down to passion. It's going to come down to fitness. It's going to come down to mental fortitude. And South Africa, at the end, quite simply, were a lot calmer with retaining the lead they had in that last minute, just ahead by 1 point, sticking into it until the very end. South Africa, though, with England, another set-piece heavy team, are going to have a bit of a hard time this week. They're going to be very battered by the end, though they should be expected to win absolutely fairly so due to England not having a good track record this year. France are really going to just give them a hard time going forward. Thank you very much to you guys for watching this video as well. This has been part 2 of how South Africa crushed the French dream to win a World Cup in front of their home crowd. It's going to be back to the drawing board for France, while South Africa in just a few days' time will power on potentially to the final if they can win their semi. I'll see you later, guys. Really appreciate it for viewing, and I'll see you later.